Okay, we resume Hilchos from Shulchan Aruch HaRav. More about the problems of ribis that arise from buying on credit. So here's where it could, all right, we'll let the Rav talk, and you'll see a very interesting case over here. So we're talking about the problem of that it's ribis. If you tell a buyer, listen, if you pay for the merchandise up front, it's 10. You're going to wait a year, it's 12. Okay, that's ribis, right? Without talking about in what way it would be Doraisa or Dorabanan. Where are you going? Anyways, sorry about that. So now, here's the fun case. Mafilim shavak shav yud beis beir acheres okech b'lichal sham b'tok shav yud beis yasrog mos adzma persh kol mocher v'gam mocher mochsham akshav ilokomen okech. No to sham miyad. So now, think about the following case, right? So now the buyer of the merchandise says, look, I'm taking this right now on credit. Here, where we are situated, it's worth 10. So I'm not going to pay you right now. I'll pay you 12 for 10. Over there it sells for 12. I will pay you 12. I will pay you 12 eventually. And I'm actually taking it to a place where it's worth 12. Right? And, and not only that, the seller actually intended himself to export it to that place where it sells for 12, right? So he could have taken it there and sold it and gotten 12 immediately. So he's actually losing because this piece of merchandise is going to bring to that place where the buyer is going and sell it for 12 and get 12 up front. Now he's giving it to this buyer and getting 12, let's say, after a year's time. Okay. So you get it, so the buyer is taking it on credit for a higher price, but it actually is worth that higher price where he's going. And only that, the seller was intending to send that merchandise there and sell it for that higher price. It's still a problem of ribis, right? I'm being asur, right? It's still asur because it's still, look, they did the transaction in New York, let's say, and in New York it sells for 10. Right, and because the guy was not given 10 up front, he says, all right, let it be 12 because I'm stretching it out. Right? Makes no difference that he's going to take the merchandise to New Jersey where it's actually worth 12. And it makes no difference that the seller was also going to sell it in New Jersey for 12, right? So the seller's not even gaining, he's only losing because if this guy wouldn't take it, to pay him, 12, let's say after a year's time, he would have taken it tomorrow to New Jersey and sold for 12, got 12 on the spot. So he could have gotten 12 24 hours later and say he's going to get 12 a year later. So the seller didn't gain anything, he only lost, right? And the buyer really didn't gain any, didn't really get a big mitzvah, is not really paying, how do you want to look at it? Doesn't look like the buyer really is getting interest because or paying interest, I say. It doesn't really look like the buyer is paying interest, paying extra because he delayed, because he's taking it with him to a place where it sells for 12. It's still usher. It goes by the time and place where the merchandise switched hands. We get usher. Okay, Achrais is Slurbo Lochasa. Losa ir achar sham yalam mocher, shazokech eno kashul im koskoso. The only way to make it mutter in this scenario that we set it up is if the merchandise remains the responsibility of the seller. It remains the seller's until the buyer takes it there and sells it. And then, he could play with the money as long as he wants until the pay by date arrives. All right, then it's mutter, right? Because it's like the buyer is actually an agent of the seller to sell it in New Jersey for the higher price, and just the buyer, who's actually now the sales agent, can enjoy the money he got from the sale until the due date to pay for the merchandise comes due. Right, so he's not really paying extra for having delayed payment. He is actually a agent of the seller to sell it in New Jersey. New Jersey just being a metaphor for a place where it's costs more. Right, so he's an agent to sell it there, and he could keep the money that he got for selling it there until the due date to pay the seller arrives. Right, but in the end, he wasn't really borrowing the money. He was an agent of the seller, and he was allowed to play with the money he got for the sale. Use it until time to pass it over to the seller arrived. Right. Lefikach, and therefore, so why this is not a good idea for the seller anyway. If he's an agent of the seller, right? If that's that way of making it mutter will not benefit anybody, because if he's an agent of the seller, so now the seller is going to have to give him wages, for the pain of schlepping, let's say, to New Jersey, and the food, he's got to eat something when he's on this mission, right? And also other travel expenses until he sells that merchandise in that city. Because if he doesn't pay him, right, for his expenses, his travel expenses and whatnot, then it's, then you see it was clearly a loan. He lent him the money he can get for this object. He lent him that money, and he's taking a higher price than what that object is worth. Right, because the guy delayed payment, right? So you want to make it like mutter that the guy is your agent, right? You got to pay him like an agent. Can't So now there's a more lenient opinion that says, listen, as we said many times, the Torah only prohibited taking ribis if it's done as a loan, interest on a loan. Doing this type of shtick, with mekach umimkar, in merchandise and commerce. So it's only asur midrabanan. So since the problem of taking merchandise and paying more for it, if you're delaying payment, is usher, it's ribis midrabanan. It's ribis midrabanan, right? Especially if the ribis drabanan, unless did some ultra complicated things to make it ribis doraisa, which we discussed earlier, right? Not ultra complicated. We do some things that it could be converted ribis doraisa, but the way it's just regular commerce. Right, it's regular commerce, and it's ribis d'Rabbanan because it's really mekach umimkar. Right, so now the since it's only d'Rabbanan, so this thing they have to make it as if you're his agent. Just it's enough to give a hecker, give him some stuff, some compensation for the pain of being his agent to sell it somewhere else. Right, something small for the don't have to pay mamish full wages and pay for all his food. Here's the big problem. According to this more lenient opinion, that since it's only midrabanan, it's enough to symbolically pay him like an agent. That's as far as wages and food. But the travel expense, you got to give him in full or deduct that in full from the higher price that he's paying. Right. But sort of showed what did him eno mochelo bioka klal shazeh bigishre maus lo vos vamalo enli mos eshechavet shari tzorach lemochro tov olicho lemochro shulchan lemochro machreo velova lechol mos atzma ploi tzorach lito scharmo b'shem tzorach b'shvil alva afal pi shetorach b'shvil atzmo ken shebegia mizano lemal v'shechavet simkor chavet tzorach litzorach ba'atzmu b'mechiros l'kacha halacha b'divrei Yisrael halacha harameko b'dai b'davar amud b'chol inyan. He adds in the parentheses, like the first opinion, that takes this very seriously. That if you want to, clarify that he's your agent to sell it, now really you did it as a loan. The guy needed money. I don't have money. I could give you this merchandise, sell it, and enjoy the money until such and such a date. And what I want in return is 12, right? And it's only worth 10 here. Well, it's worth 12 there. Take it there, sell it for 12, keep the 12 and pay me back, 12 whenever you at such and such a date, right? So in that case, you have to give them, full wages, right? Right, because listen, it was otherwise it seems that the seller made money, because he made money. It cost him time, but he made money because he sells it immediately, he gets 10. Gave it to the guy, to sell it over there for 12 and pay me back 12. So he's getting 12, right? Because he let the guy, have an extended time to pay. So there's like no shortcuts over there. But so when we say you have to pay him wages as a agent, like full wages. All right, but look, since this is only Ribis D'Rabban, you can take the more lenient opinion, because as B'divrei Sofrim Halacha Harameko. So in this case that we said, look, I can't lend you money, but take this object and sell it, and whatever you get for it, you'll pay me back, even if it's a higher price than what I sell for on the spot today in this location. All right, so it's enough to get around the problem that looks like Ribis. That's Ribis D'Rabban, just by paying him something small for his trouble to be your agent to sell it somewhere else. Something small, symbolic for buy food. Small is good, but again, the symbolic fee is only for the effort food. There is no skirting around that. You have to pay him his travel expenses. If I understood this correct. All right, but now we're going to put a little spin on this. When do we say that the merchandise has to remain the responsibility of the seller until it gets sold, in order to legitimize viewing the buyer as actually an agent of the seller to sell it over there, right? Sell in the place where it sells for more. And we say also you have to give him, something for his effort and for his food. Right, rack them out. This is only a problem, as he says, that listen, between me and you, the sale's really final. I don't want this thing back. I want the 12. Here it sells for 10, right? I'll give you this thing, that you could sell it and whatever, and you pay me back such a. I want 12. I do not want this back. You cannot return it. I'm telling you. Right? So even though we'll make it as if you're my aid, to make it mutter, you're my agent, and I'll give you something for your effort, and I'll give you something for your food, and I'll even deduct the travel costs. But bottom line is, this deal is final. I do not want this merchandise back. You can't return it to me. I want the 12. Here it sells for 10 on the spot. You're taking it to see what you could get for it in New Jersey, and I want 12. I don't want the merchandise back. So that's when we said everything that we said. You have to make it. That has to remain the liability of the seller, and and you have to get travel expenses for sure, according to everybody. You also have to get something at least symbolic for the food and for the effort of acting as agent. Right, that's if the deal is final. You're not returning this merchandise. This does not come back to the store. I get the money, the 12, instead of the 10 that you should have given up front. b'osa'ir ve'okach hano b'mechira zu rak mashel v'lomels lasas ben shochav ad zman piron. And also another thing that locks us into this very strict criteria: deduct the travel expense according to everyone, and at least give something symbolic for the food and agent fees, if not something full, like the more stringent opinion, right? That's also talking about that. And also when you sell it over there, right, for 12, right, I want 12, right? And you don't sell for 12 and give me 12, right? You don't like say, listen, whatever you sell it for, I want, let's say, go ahead, make a killing on it. Go ahead, right? I want 1/3 of the profits. I want 1/3. You're not making it like that. You're like locking them in. You're giving me 12. You're going to sell for 12 and you're giving me for 12, right? Right? As opposed to saying, listen, sell for whatever you can and give me 1/3 of what it is above the 10 that's worth here. So I didn't say it correctly. Over there, sell it for whatever you can. I get 1/3 of the markup, right? You didn't do it that way. You didn't do it. You locked them in. I get 12 no matter what. I get 12 no matter what. To make it more accurate, okay? Right, so that's when we say the only way to make this mutter is you have to be his agent, and therefore if you're his agent, the merchandise is under the responsibility of the seller if it gets lost or swamped or stolen. All right, and you got to get, full travel expenses at minimally something minimal for your effort and food, right? But let's say like this. Here, take the merchandise as such and such. Anything above that amount is yours. Listen, it's 12. You know what? Let's say it's 12. But you know what? You could sell it for whatever you want, and it's yours. Anything above 12 is yours. Not only that, right? Let's say you no buyers. You could return it. I'll take the merchandise back. Right? So think about this. Right now, he's doing it in a way that the sale is not absolute and final. Right? He can return it. Right? And B, right? You're going to sell it, right? Right, you could sell it, and you, the buyer, can make profit. Right? You can make profit. I just want my 12. Right? You can return it if you don't get it. You could always return it, and all I want is my 12. Everything above that is yours. So it leaves a lot of possibilities open that the buyer can benefit, and also you can always return it. Right? So now the buyer can say, okay, you know what? This merchandise, as I transport it, it's under my responsibility. It's not your loss. If it gets lost, it's my loss. Right? It's much for him to take responsibility as if he is the owner, as if he's the owner. Not only that, under these conditions that we just outlined, you could always return it, and I just want 12, but you could sell for whatever you want and keep it. Right? Right, so under this, so the buyer could take responsibility for the merchandise. That if it gets lost, it's his loss. A, B is that you don't have to give the buyer anything symbolic for his, or let alone full amount for his toil, his effort, and for his food. Because after all, the seller is saying, buddy, you can sell for whatever you want and keep it. Keep the difference. Keep the difference. That's compensation enough. I shouldn't have to pay you because I shouldn't have to pay you for your effort and your food. Right, so now even that, listen, and even though I look here and now it's worth 10, I want 12. Well, that's not a problem because it wasn't an absolute sale yet. right? Because it's returnable. You allow them to return it. So since it's returnable, the sale is not absolute. The sale becomes final when it can no longer be returned. And at that point, you sold it for 12. You're right. And at that point, it was sold for 12 and worth 12. Right? Now, by the way, there's this criteria that we said that makes it all mutter, right? Is not just talking, you have to dafka go to a different town. You don't have to go to a different town. You could, let's say, take the merchandise and literally just wait around, which makes it look even more like it was just waiting around, right? Just waiting around, holding the money, holding the merchandise under your hand. Say, listen, take it now. You take it out. It's in 6 months. You pay me back in 6 months. You give it me for 12. The guy hangs around the same city and waits for the prices to go up, right? And sells it for the higher price. And it's all mutter if he says, hey, it's returnable. Sale's not final. Sale's not final, right? Right. B, you could keep whatever you sell it for, right? So under those conditions, it's mutter. I don't have to give him nothing for his effort, for his food, and if it's all in the same city, because the sale is not final, right? Right. Final means the guy doesn't have to take the merchandise back. Sale's not final, and even if the buyer, who's actually the borrower, has a lot to gain from this. He's not paying extra, right? It's a business prospect. It's a business prospect, and because he might sell for a lot when he stands to gain, not to lose for waiting on payment, but he stands to gain because he'll flip it, right? And like I said, under these criteria that we just had, there's the buyer could take full responsibility if it gets lost or damaged. It's his loss, right? He has to pay the seller. And under these criteria also that we just outlined, that it's the sale's not final, and he could keep whatever profit he makes from it, even above and beyond what he promised to give for it. You can keep it, right? So under those two, you don't have to give him any agency fees either. But let's say like this is all talking about if you successfully follow through on these grand plans to sell it for a profit, and minimally for what you're going to pay for it, let alone more, right? But let's say, okay, yeah, that's the deal. But like the problem is, you need money now. So you didn't wait to sell it. You sold it at a loss, right? So that's also b'chol inyan. That's definitely prohibited because it's ribis. Because you said you make all this legal phony baloney. Yeah, you could return it and sell it and make a profit. But the boss says, you're not paying for it now. I want 12. And you're not going to wait to sell it or take it somewhere to get 12. You're not, right? You're not. You need money now, so you'll sell it for 8, or certainly not more than 10, right? It's ribis, of course, midrabanan, right? It's also b'chol inyan, because about all that talk, didn't help you, or didn't change the reality that in the end of the day, you took it for 10, you got 10 for it, and you ended up paying 12 for the same object that was only worth 10 because you couldn't pay for it on the spot. So it's still asur midrabanan. Okay, where are we at? I will do one more. Where are you going?
I'm going to Costco.
Yeah, can you get the good Israeli sheep milk feta cheese? Sheep milk feta cheese, and whatever else you think we need. Thank you. Sorry, this is all being recorded in my house. You have to deal with, household issues coming up on the tape. All right, so let's just do one more seif. No, it's very long. Let's start fresh from this point in our next session. Okay, Kol Tov.